of mine, he always says, revenge is a fool's game.
Both Naughty Dog's The Last of Us and Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption explore the idea of revenge through the journey of their protagonists, Ellie Williams and John Marston. While each game approaches revenge differently, the game's underlying message regarding revenge is extremely similar when observing the consequences of the protagonist's vengeance on the entire narrative. Each character has their newly rebuilt life destroyed by seeking revenge on someone who was in part responsible for the downfall of their old life. When comparing the protagonists of each game, the similarities between John Marston and Ellie Williams become increasingly evident. Let's take a look at the path of revenge that each character embarks on. After the downfall of the Vanderland gang, John attempts to build a new life for his family, battling his nature as an outlaw and trying to change by escaping his past ways. After working hard as a farmhand, John gets a loan from the bank and is able to purchase Beach's Hope. This ranch functions as a new home for his family, ultimately creating a new life for his family and successfully overcoming his past and his violent ways. After putting aside her initial quest for revenge against Abby for the murder of Joel, Ellie settles into a new life on a farm with Dina and their baby, just as John set aside his past life to live on a farm. This allows Ellie to put the traumas of the past behind her, overcoming her past and her vengeance. Both protagonists settle down on a farm with their wife and child, and are seemingly successful in putting the past behind them, until they are approached by a figure from their past who pulls them back into their old life.
I found him. I found Micah.
No.
Sadie and Charles appear at John's new home, with Sadie explaining that she has a lead on Micah's location. Sadie asks if John will come with them, to which John accepts, much to Abigail's dismay. After everything that John gave to build his new life, he would risk it to seek revenge on Micah, as John could easily die on this journey and never return to this life.
If I let him go, this place ain't no more real than one of Jack's dragons.
John has immense survivor's guilt after the fall of the gang, and feels it would be a disservice to Arthur if he was to let Micah run free after all the damage he caused to people like Arthur and the other gang members. John feels that it is unfair that he gets to live this peaceful life, while others weren't so fortunate, and to let one of the causes of this misfortune roam free would be selfish in his mind, hence his agreement to go. While Sadie doesn't guilt him into it quite as heavily as we will see Tommy do in The Last of Us, she does say to John and Charles,
We owe this to Arthur. He cared about stopping Micah, and that's what we're doing.
reinforcing the idea that it would be selfish of John to live this new life when Micah is still out there. Although Ellie was experiencing PTSD while living at the farm, her and Dina were working through it together. This was until Tommy visited Ellie and Dina's home. Tommy explains to Ellie that he has a lead on someone sounding like Abby. He is unable to go because of the injuries he sustained during the previous revenge quest against Abby, heavily insinuating that Ellie should be the one to go. Dina explains that they're done with that, much like how Abigail explains to Sadie that her and John are done with that life. Tommy mocks their new life and guilt trips them heavily for not agreeing to get revenge knowing Abby is still out there, instead living their peaceful life on the farm, much like how John feels about his own life in the beginning of American Venom. Ellie is unable to continue living her new life after this, with her PTSD and strong guilt overcoming her, resulting in her embarking on her revenge quest once again. Tommy and Sadie parallel each other heavily, as they both serve the same role in the story for each of our protagonists, with both of them being broken from the events in the past and unable to move on from those events, pulling their protagonists back down with them. However, I find it interesting that Sadie doesn't get nearly as much criticism as Tommy does. The key difference in each of our protagonists is that John Marston follows through with his revenge, while Ellie is able to break the cycle of revenge at the last moment. But what does this actually mean for our characters? John Marston following through with his revenge and killing Micah leads to our apparent happy ending, with John getting the money from Blackwater, returning to the farm lifestyle, and marrying Abigail. This happy ending is quickly shut down, however, as we will see in the credits of the game that the Pinkertons have tracked down John from Micah's corpse, leading to the events of the first game, in which John is used by the government until he satisfies their needs, to which he is eventually shot and killed. John following through with his revenge ultimately resulted in the Pinkertons finding him and ending his new life that he worked so hard to build. This way of writing revenge enables the player to feel the satisfaction of revenge before displaying the harsh consequences that come with revenge, ultimately promoting the sentiment that revenge is bad. After tracking down Abby, Ellie does not follow through with her revenge, letting Abby go and returning to her farm, which is now empty, as Dina had left after Ellie chose revenge over her new life. Ellie feels the consequences of subsiding her new life in exchange for revenge, as she was unable to return to her peaceful life with Dina. However, her choice not to kill Abby ended the cycle of revenge. Ellie ending the cycle means that both Abby and Ellie get to have a fresh start and put the past behind them, with Ellie being granted a form of closure without having to kill anyone else. One of the main criticisms of The Last of Us 2 is that Ellie goes through so much in her quest for revenge against Abby, but ultimately decides against killing her. Many players feel robbed at this fact, but I believe that the people that feel this way fail to understand that this was the best outcome for Ellie in the long run. Revenge is messy and exhausting, but just because you went through pain attempting to do something harmful doesn't make following through with the harmful action worth the pain that it took you to get there. For those of you who think that Ellie should have killed Abby, I'm going to explain to you why Ellie's choice is more optimal than John's, by creating a hypothetical in which Ellie kills Abby just as John did. Let's say that Ellie followed through with her revenge as John had done. Lev, an innocent teen who Abby was taking care of, would be left in a boat stranded, most likely dying without Abby's care. Ellie still returns home and has nothing left. However, she has to live with the newly acquired guilt of leaving an innocent kid to die stranded because she killed Abby. Even worse perhaps, Lev could survive and seek revenge on Ellie, continuing the cycle of revenge that began many deaths ago. The much less harmful option was to let go of her revenge, as painful as it may be, as everyone gets to move on and begin anew, ending the cycle. Given that the most optimal option for Ellie was not to seek revenge on Abby, should John have killed Micah? Regardless of whether you think Abby is a bad person, it is clear that Micah is a significantly worse one, with many agreeing that he can be considered pure evil. While Micah may have deserved death, and it being very satisfying to put him down, it ultimately destroyed John Marston's life, just as Ellie's journey of revenge had destroyed hers. However, Ellie was granted the opportunity to start again, while John's vengeance continued a cycle that would be inherited by his son Jack Marston. Jack Marston's decision to pursue revenge after John's death ultimately continued the cycle of revenge and violence that began with John's vengeance on Micah, leaving Jack Marston with nothing left after following through with killing Edgar Ross. Although The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption are quite different games, the message regarding the negative effects of revenge is strikingly similar. What we can learn from this as an audience is that when you have the choice to enact revenge, the better choice is to move forward, not necessarily forgiving the person that harmed you, however making the decision not to live in the past and instead embracing a better future, as holding on to the past won't allow you to change it. However, if you let go, you will find that there is a future that you have the power to change.